Okay, so good evening, everybody. So this is the second go through of how to meditate, the How to Meditate module. If you missed last week, there's, I think, in the calendar or on the Facebook page, there's a link to something I wrote for that Buddhist Bible, the Kung Fu magazine. An article called Meditation in Tibetan Buddhism. So basically, we just ran through that last week. Is that right, Bob? I think that's pretty much what we did.
Yep. And that's on the calendar. You can get the link to that.
Yeah, so basically just read through that and made a few inane comments as usual along the way. And I suggested homework, doing some extended breathing meditation or some breathing meditation. So I don't know if anyone's been able to do that. So let's start, as we often do, with that right now. Meditation on the breath. And another thing we did, which is actually towards the end of that article, is we talked about the meditation posture. So if you can, I'll run through it a bit later, but if you want to try and sit in the recommended meditation posture, the so-called Vairochana position of Mapa, the translator, then that'd be good. But otherwise, whatever you're comfortable, whatever posture you're comfortable adopting for meditation. So sit in that meditation posture. Your body is relaxed but firm and stable. Then bring your mind inside, away from external objects of distraction. And once inside, the trick is to keep it away from internal objects of distraction, which is mainly the discursive, chattering mind, the constant stream of thoughts, apparently random, that wants to take your mind here and there. So we have to overcome that. And we also have to watch out for the sleepy, sluggish mind that makes everything kind of go dark and sleepy, like we do when we close our eyes and go to sleep normally. So that's a distraction in meditation too. And you find your breath where it goes out, comes in through your nostrils. So that's the point of focus right there, where you can feel your breath going out and coming in. So then generate strong determination. Think, now I'm going to focus on my breath, without allowing myself to become distracted by anything whatsoever. And then keep your mind on your breath for as long as you can. We'll do this a little bit longer than usual, maybe 5 minutes or so. So now let's generate bodhicitta motivation for this evening's session. Think, the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings out of suffering to enlightenment. in order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. That means my completing the path to enlightenment. And that depends on being able to meditate on the path to enlightenment. So in order to understand how to meditate, in order to follow the path that leads to enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, I'm going to participate in this class on how to meditate. So like that, very briefly, we generate the bodhicitta motivation. That mind of bodhicitta is the principal cause of enlightenment. So it's important, as we have the chance in this life, to try and make everything we do with that motivation, so that everything we do becomes a cause for enlightenment. Okay, so obviously meditation is something we do with our mind, and it's good to know a little bit more about what the mind is. Well, before we just get into that, does anyone have any comment to make on your experience of meditating on the breath, either just now or over the last week? Yes? No?
I will ask you, when I've done meditation in the past, it's always been focused on my center, more so than, as well as my breathing, but it's something that I find myself focusing on. And I don't know if that's something I should try to avoid.
I don't know. What do you mean by your center?
More in like martial arts, it's always been like your center, your chi, your center of gravity, and your breath comes from there and leaves from there.
So where in your body do you find that?
Basically your waistline below your navel.
Yes, well, we do a form of meditation that focuses on that area. We call that the inner fire or inner heat meditation, or Lama Yeshe called the seed syllable meditation. I was thinking we might practice that in the 4th or 5th week. It's a little more advanced than some of the, like the meditation we just did. So I think we'll practice that one later.
Sure.
But I don't know exactly how what you mean when you do that. But if you're here for that session, then we can compare what we do with what you do and see how they're similar, how they're different. With the meditation on the breath, it's kind of a warm-up exercise, really, for other meditations. I mean, it can be a meditation in itself, of course, but the way we do it for a few minutes at the beginning of a session is just to kind of center our mind and to lay the ground for, as it were, for what other meditation we're going to do, whether it's an analytical meditation or a visualization or something like that, Anyway, so there's a class that Geshe-la teaches at the center sometimes in the basic program on Wednesday nights. I don't know when he last did it, called Lorig, Mind and the Mental Factors. Do you remember, Bob? Was Geshe-la taught that recently, or?
There was a handful of years ago.
Yeah, so, there are some good books that talk about that. There's this one by Lati Rinpoche and Betsy Napa called Mind in Tibetan Buddhism, published by Snowline. This is an early edition, so they've probably changed the cover by now, I don't know. Mind in Tibetan Buddhism. And then this book by Geshe Rapton called Mind and Its Functions. And so that's published by Tapa Churling, Geshe Rapton's Center in Switzerland. So I don't know if it's still available or not. But then there's this one published by Wisdom by Geshe Tashi Tsering, Buddhist Psychology. It's volume 3 in the series of Foundations of Buddhist Thought. Buddhist Psychology. So they all cover similar ground. And there's another book published by Wisdom, I don't know if it's still in print, called Meditative States in Tibetan Buddhism. That deals more with the 4 concentrations and the 4 formless absorptions. And has quite a long section on developing calm abiding, or shine, or shamatha. Shamatha in Sanskrit, or shine in Tibetan, calm abiding.
Would you repeat the title of that?
Meditative States in Tibetan Buddhism. Wisdom Publications. And there are a couple of other books too, I think, on similar topics. But what I'm going to use just now to talk about a little bit more about the mind is this Jeffrey Hopkins book called Meditation on Emptiness. This cover was eaten by rabbits. So that's one way to internalize the teaching. But like meditation on an empty stomach.
Are you going to use that book tonight to?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You have a copy?
Yes, I'm going to grab my copy real quick.
Okay. Yeah, this is a really good book for all the different aspects of Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. It covers pretty much everything, and it goes into a lot of detail on topics that Lam Rim teachings touch on, but don't really go into. So this was Jeffrey. I don't know if you know Jeffrey Hopkins is one of the leading Tibetan Buddhist scholars in this country, and one of the first Tibetan Buddhist scholars. He and Bob Thurman and another guy called Chris George studied with Geshe Wongel in the late 50s. Geshe Wongel came to America, and so that was even before the Tibetans went into exile. He was a Mongolian Lama, Geshe Wongel, and started a center in Washington, New Jersey, called Tibetan Buddhist Learning Center, TBLC. And so those early scholars, Hopkins was at the University of Virginia till he retired, and Bob Thurman was at Columbia. And Chris George worked for wealthy Chinese benefactor of Buddhism, Dr. C.T. Shen, who started the Institute for the Advanced Study of World Religions at the University of New York in Stony Brook. Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche Dr. C.T. Shen sponsored the first visit of Lama Yeshe Lam Zopa Rinpoche to America in '74. And they went to his Buddhist Institute down there on Long Island. I guess Long Island, Stony Brook. Anyone know where Stony Brook is? I think it's on Long Island. And there's some pictures of them with Chris George there. So those was three of the early scholars. So then Jeffrey was His Holiness the Dalai Lama's interpreter in the 80s, 70s, in '79 when he first came to the States, and in the 80s till Thupten Jinpa took over in the late 80s, early 90s. So this was his Jeffrey Hopkins PhD thesis that he made into a book, and we published at Wisdom Publications in '83. So there's a chapter, page 213, called The Selfless. So there he's talking about selfless phenomena. Phenomena are without a self, which is all phenomena really. But the first division is interesting. It's divided into non-existent and existent. So pretty much non-existent we don't need to deal with. Then existence, I think existence are divided into permanent phenomena and things, or basically impermanent phenomena. So permanent phenomena are divided into space, analytical cessation, non-analytical cessation, and suchness, or the ultimate nature of phenomena. So we just pass over that. Then, those are permanent phenomena. So there aren't that many, really. Basically space and the ultimate nature of things. Then the division of impermanent phenomena or things, they're divided into form, consciousness, and non-associated compositional factors, Demenducci. So this is this is one of the things that kind of hooked me with my first teachings in Tibetan Buddhism back in Kopan in '72, was how Buddhism explains everything that exists, even explains things that don't exist. So and it categorizes them, and there's everything's in charts, which is I don't know if there's anything in Western philosophy or other religions does that. It says, well, let's look at everything, things that don't exist and things that do exist. Things that do exist, they're permanent and impermanent. The impermanent ones are divided into form, matter, consciousness, and non-associated, neither mind nor form. So the forms are divided into, eye sense, ear sense, nose sense, tongue sense, body sense. So the sense organs and the objects, the visible form, sound, odor, taste, tangible objects. And then there's a sort of a subtle form for the mental consciousness. So I'm just going to breeze through these. So visible forms are divided into colors and shapes, and there are divisions of color, so primary colors and secondary colors. Who knew mist was a secondary color? So there are, the primary colors are blue, yellow, white, red, and there's a bunch of secondary colors, 8 of them. And then there's division of shapes into long, short, high, low, square, round, level, non-level. Then there's quite a complicated table dividing sounds into various categories. Then odors and tastes are similarly divided. There are these different things. And then tangible objects are divided into elements, and tangible objects arisen from elements. So the elements are earth, water, fire, and wind. And the tangible objects arisen from elements are things like smoothness, roughness, heaviness, lightness, cold, hunger, and thirst. So it's an analysis of everything that exists. Then there's this division of forms for the mental consciousness. So that's a little complicated. So then we get to consciousness or mind. That's what we're interested in tonight. So I really recommend this book. It's really good. Don't you think, Jeff?
Yes, it is unbelievable. I'm switching. I have like 2 books going right now, and this is like my main one. It's incredible.
Yeah, really. Anyway.
And the thing is, I'm on page 230, and that's exactly where you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, so you're going from beginning to end? Yeah, I never quite was game enough to do that. I just use it for reference. So there's lots of parts I haven't even read, you know. But, you know, yeah, it's great to do that. So, you know, Jeffrey's ex-wife, Betsy Napper, who was the co-author of this book with Lati Rinpoche, Mind in Tibetan Buddhism, they were married for a while, actually. She was his student at UVA, I think, at some point. And she helped found the Tibetan Nuns Project. So she does a lot of work sponsoring Tibetan nuns and nunneries in India. And she's the assistant editor on Meditation on Emptiness. So the source of this section on consciousness comes from Lati Rinpoche's oral teachings. I don't know if he's using the same text as he used for this book, Meditation in Tibetan Buddhism. So the second division of things, or impermanent phenomena, is consciousness, which is defined as clear and knowing. So that's what we always say, right? Clear and knowing, that's the definition of mind or consciousness. Formless, has the ability to perceive objects. And, you know, since that's its nature, that kind of proves it doesn't come from the brain, which is a physical object. It has to come, its principal cause has to be something else, something also clear and knowing, or formless, with the ability to perceive objects. You know, in other words, a preceding state of mind. So consciousness is of 2 types, divided into 2, mind and mental factors. So there's some technical stuff about the mind, about what mind is. And then there's divisions of minds into eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mental consciousness. So 6 senses, 5 physical senses, sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch, and the mental consciousness is 6th. So, when the when there's a visual object and the eye conscious and the eye organ makes contact with that, and then the eye consciousness perceives that object. That's when those three things are in apposition: object, eye sense, and eye consciousness. Then feeling arises. That's what causes feeling to arise. So what I really want to talk about now is the mental factors. So there are primary consciousnesses and secondary minds or mental factors. So there are 51 mental factors. So, we blithely talk about the mind this, the mind that, but there are many, you can see there are many, many aspects to the mind, many divisions of the mind. And I don't think any of this is really taught in Western psychology or Western psychiatry. At one point in my brief medical career, I, before the lamas derailed it, at one point I was quite interested in psychiatry and I was thinking about becoming a psychiatrist, and I did a 4-month rotation on a psych ward as a second year resident medical officer at the hospital where I trained. And I've told this story before, but what put me off becoming a psychiatrist was the psychiatrists. I was like, I really don't think I want to finish up like these guys. So I sought other fields of specialty. So there are 51 secondary minds. So there are 5 omnipresent factors, mental factors. There are 5 determining factors. There are 11 positive or virtuous factors. There are 6 root delusions, afflictions he calls them. There are 20 secondary delusions, and there are 4 changeable mental factors. So omnipresent means that these 5 mental factors are present in every mind moment. So that they're feeling, discrimination, intention, contact, and mental engagement. So broadly speaking, there are 3 kinds of feeling: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Again, the book goes into great detail in a lot of these, which I'm not going to do now, but there are 3 kinds of feelings, and feeling is present in every mind moment. So I don't know if you're familiar with the 12 links of dependent origination. Feeling is one of the 12. So, there's ignorance, karmic formation, consciousness, mind and form, or name and form it's called. Then there are the 6 sense bases, and then there's contact, and then feeling, and then from feeling, craving and grasping arise, and then becoming, rebirth, old age, and death. So that's, if we look at the wheel of life that we see those depictions of, you'll see the 12 links around the rim, and the hub is the pig, snake, and chicken, representing ignorance, anger, and attachment. And then in between there's the 6 realms, the 3 upper realms and the 3 lower realms. So that's kind of a pictorial representation of where we live, cyclic existence. It's our home. It's been our home since beginningless time. We've always been the caretaker. It's a Shining reference. So how we bind ourselves in cyclic existence through the 12 links is explained in that, on the rim of that wheel that shows these 12 links. So feeling is the basis of craving, attachment, and craving and grasping, you know. So then discrimination apprehends upon the aggregation of an object, sense, power, and a consciousness. So what I said before. You know. So there's non-conceptual apprehension of signs and conceptual apprehension of signs. Again, there's quite a long discussion on that, so I'm not going into that. Intention is the third mental factor. It's the mental factor that moves and directs the mind that accompanies it to its object. Intention. It has the function of engaging the mind in the virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral. It's the most important of all mental factors, all 51, because through its power, minds and mental factors engage in objects like pieces of iron powerlessly moved by a magnet. So again, a few details about intention there. Then the fourth omnipresent mental factor is contact, which distinguishes its object upon the aggregation of object, sense, power, and mind. These three things: object, sense, power, consciousness. Contact distinguishes object as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral in accordance with subsequent feelings of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. So contact has the function of serving as the basis of feeling. So that's why in the wheel of life is it contact, feeling, craving, grasping. And then finally, there's a mental engagement, which directs the mind, accompanying it to a specific object of observation. So those are the five ever present. Then there are five determining mental factors. So those are aspiration, belief, mindfulness, stabilization, and knowledge. Aspiration, belief, mindfulness, stabilization, and knowledge. So again, I think this is a little technical. I think I'm not going to go into those. So then we come to the so the next section's a little easier understood, I think. So there are then 11 positive or virtuous mental factors or positive mental factors. So those are faith, shame, embarrassment, non-attachment, non-hatred, non-ignorance, effort, pliancy, conscientiousness, equanimity, and non-harmfulness. So there are three types of faith. There's faith has the aspect of clarity, conviction, or wish to attain or aspiration. So faith, one student once asked Lama Atisha, what's the most important thing in practicing Dharma? And he said, faith, faith, and faith. So, but our faith has to be based on understanding. So that's why it's, so important for us to study the teachings. And then, and then do analytical meditation to come to a conclusion as to whether they're correct or not. So once we've done that, then it's much easier to have faith. So then there's the 6 root delusions or 6 root afflictions, which are desire, anger, pride, ignorance, doubt, and afflicted view. So desire perceives an internal or external contaminated phenomenon to be pleasant from the point of view of its own entity, and thereupon seeks it. So, desire sees objects of desire as inherently desirable, and that's how we become attached to things that bring us pleasure.
Nick, how is can we say that we desire or aspire to become enlightened? Is that a desire in and of itself?
Well, the Buddha said, if you desire all happiness, abandon all desire. So that's a little paradoxical, I guess. But ultimately, we want to free ourselves from all desire. But the desire for enlightenment, the desire to benefit sentient beings, the desire to free sentient beings from suffering, they're positive aspirations. But as long as we're coming from a place of ignorance or ego, as long as we don't realize the ultimate nature of our own mind, it's going to be contaminated. That desire is not pure desire, but it's better than desire for sense objects or power for power's sake, or material possessions and so forth. So desire to understand the teachings better is positive, because that desire leads us to a place of freedom from desire. We can't switch off all desire straight away. So we try to make our desire for positive objects, desire for teachings, desire to be with our teacher, desire to attain, the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and right view of emptiness, things like that. So, what do you think? Good enough? So then it says, like oil that has set into cloth, or if you spill oil on paper, how it just sinks in to paper. So, desire has this aspect of wanting to sink into its object and not be separated from it. That's why it's very hard to separate from objects of attachment, because our mind has kind of sunk into them. So it divides desire into three types, desire of the desire realm, desire of the form realm, and desire of the formless realm. So usually when we talk about cyclic existence, we're talking about the 6 realms, the 3 lower realms: hell realm, hungry ghost realm, animal realm, and the 3 upper realms: the human realm, the sura, and the asura realm. So that's how it's divided up. But it's also divided up in another way into these 3 realms: the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So the desire realm encompasses all the nearly all the 6 realms. Desire realm includes the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, the animal realm, the human realm, the asura or the demigod realm, and the 6 lower levels of the god realm, or the sura realm. Sura is the Sanskrit word for those gods, and asura is the literally non-gods, or the demigods. So there, in the 6 realms, there are these 2 celestial realms, or so-called god realms. So the god realm has 27 levels. So there are 6 levels. The lower 6 levels are in the desire realm. So that's what the desire realm encompasses. Nearly all of nearly all the samsaric realms, except the form realm and the formless realm. So of the 27 god realms, and this is what that's what this book, Meditative States in Tibetan Buddhism, goes into great detail about, these different, the form and the formless realms. So there are 17 levels of the form realm, the form gods, and there are 4 formless realms, or 4 absorptions, 4 concentrations. Infinite space, infinite consciousness, neither perception nor non-perception, and the summit of samsara, or the peak of cyclic existence. Those are the 4 formless realms. So I'm not sure how much detail Jeffrey goes into those, Jeffrey Hopkins, not our Jeffrey, how much he goes into them, but Leah Zala, who is kind of the co-author of this book, she was a student of Jeffrey Hopkins as well. And she and Jeffrey did the translations in this book, Meditative States in Tibetan Buddhism. So we don't often get teachings on the form and formless realms. So this is, you know, if you want to know more about them, this is a good book. So the way we get to be reborn as gods in the form and formless realm is through attaining the different levels of concentration, essentially. And this is not exclusively a Buddhist teaching either. The Hindu yogis could also attain these different levels of concentration. But, you know, and as you get higher and higher, and there's increasing bliss and joy in the mind, there's the danger of mistaking that for freedom or for liberation and getting attached to it. I think that's one of the things that the Buddha found, that when he studied with Hindu teachers, that actually the higher levels of meditative absorption that they taught, and with the accompanying, blissful sensation and total absorption in the object, he realized that wasn't the end of the road, whereas for them that was their goal. But that's still in cyclic existence, and eventually the karma to experience that finishes, and then so much merit has been burned up that the meditator dies and then passes away into the lower realms. So that's desire. So there's 3 types of desire for each of those realms. So the reason for stating that the function of desire is the generation of suffering is that the root of all suffering is birth, and the main cause of birth in cyclic existence is desire or attachment. So then the second root affliction, root delusion, is anger, which is an intention to harm sentient beings, to harm sufferings in one's own continuum, or to harm phenomena that are the sources of suffering, such as thorns. It has the function of causing oneself not to remain in contact with happiness and serves as a basis for misconduct. Through anger, one does not abide in happiness in this lifetime, and immeasurable suffering is induced in the future. And also anger is one of the potent destroyers of any merit that we've created. So that's why we, it's so easy to get angry. And that's why we always have to be careful that whenever we've created merit, which is not very often, that we dedicate it, so we protect it from destruction by anger. The third root affliction, third root delusion, is pride. So pride depends on the view of the transitory collection as a real I. The transitory collection is these 5 skandhas. You're familiar with the term skandha, or 5 aggregates. There's a form aggregate, and then there's feeling, cognition, compositional factors, and consciousness. So those are the 5 so-called aggregates, or 5 collections of things that make up a sentient being. So all sentient beings have 5 aggregates, except the beings in the 4 levels of the formless realm. They don't have the form aggregate. They just have the 4 mental aggregates. So we see a real I somewhere within our, within this sphere of the 5 aggregates, our body and our mind. We see that there's a real I, a permanent I, a self-existent I, which there's not, but that's the delusion. So we mistakenly see a real I within our body and mind complex. And then that has so pride depends on the view of the transit collection as a real I, and has the aspect of a puffing up of the mind upon observing one's own wealth, qualities, youth, and so forth. It has the function of serving as a basis for the arising of disrespect and suffering. So there are 7 types of pride. So there's pride, just general pride, a puffing up of the mind, thinking that one is superior to lower persons. So when, in the first meditation course that I did, Lama Zopa Rinpoche spent a little time on these principal and secondary delusions, which he didn't always do in subsequent courses. But I just felt, and then, so he taught these things, he explained them, and then we meditated on them to see if we could recognize them within ourselves. Desire, anger, pride. And then you will come to it, the secondary, 20 secondary delusions. So I recognize all these things in me, and I just felt that, what this meditation course was doing, what these teachings were doing, was introducing me to myself. That I didn't know myself until I did this course. That in all those years of the time that I spent, as a medical student and working in the hospital and psych ward, and I did a year in a psychoanalytic group, in a group analysis with 8 or 10 other people, with a guy psychiatrist who'd been analysed in London by Anna Freud, by Freud's daughter. And he was also very unpleasant. He was always, if you didn't pay him on time, he got really upset. Another nail in the coffin of my psychiatric aspirations. So in that year, and then in my studies and so on, I didn't come close to understanding myself as well as I did just in this 1-month course with this young Tibetan, non-university educated Tibetan Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was, 26 or 27 at the time, younger than me. So pride is just this general puffing up, thinking you're better than others. Then there's excessive pride. So 7 types. There's a puffing up of the mind thinking that one is superior to equal people. So general pride is, you're better than those lower people. Excessive pride is thinking you're superior to people who are at your level. And then pride beyond pride, which is a puffing up of the mind thinking that one is greatly superior even to persons who are superior. So then there's the, so that pride beyond pride is even in a specialized group, like in a group of specialists thinking, oh, I'm better than they are. Then there's a pride of thinking I, which is a puffing up of the mind, observing the appropriated aggregates of mind and body and thinking I. So that's what it said at the beginning, that we look at our aggregates and we impute an I. We impute a permanent I on a totally impermanent collection. Nothing permanent in our body, just atoms and molecules buzzing around, Nothing permanent in our mind, it's just a stream of consciousness that doesn't stop for the slightest fraction of a second. But our ignorant mind imputes an I there. And we impute an I, and in the first moment, when our mind, ignorance, observes, and it does this because it's been doing it since beginningless time, which is why we're still in cyclic existence. We have awareness of our being, our body and mind combination, and our ignorance imputes an I, and as it imputes an I, and first moment, the mind imputes an I, a permanent I, a real I, on this impermanent collection, and then a real I appears back to our mind, and then we believe that it really exists. So that's how the root ignorance really works in our mind, and that's the cause of all of cyclic existence. It's the cause of every suffering. So then the fifth one is the pride of conceit, a puffing up of the mind, thinking that one has attained what has not been attained, such as clairvoyance or meditative stabilization. So there's one quite well-known Western, what can I call, say, student, I guess you'd say, who has a lot of his own students, and he's proclaimed that he's realized bodhicitta and emptiness, and I don't know if he has or not, but the general consensus is that he hasn't. But I'm sure he believes it, That's the pride of conceit. Then there's the pride of slight inferiority, a puffing up of the mind, thinking that one is just a little bit lower than others who are actually greatly superior. Thinking, well, I'm not enlightened, but I'm not that far behind the Buddha, or something like that, I'm not sure if that's the same as arrogant humility, oh, I'm the most humble of all. So seventh is wrongful pride, puffing up of the mind, thinking that one has attained auspicious qualities when one has actually deviated from the path. such as claiming high attainments when one has actually been carried away by a spirit. So maybe that's also what happened to this person I was talking about. Then there's the fourth one, that is ignorance, an absence of knowledge that involves obscuration with respect to the status of phenomena. It has the function of serving as a basis for the arising of false ascertainment, doubt, and afflictions. Its principal antidote is the wisdom cognizing selflessness. So ignorance is of two types: obscuration with respect to actions and their effects, karma, and obscuration with respect to suchness or emptiness. So ignorance of conventional reality and ignorance of ultimate reality. So the ignorance of ultimate reality serves as the causal motivation for all rebirth in cyclic existence. In dependence on ignorance, the other afflictions arise. And in dependence upon them, contaminated actions are accumulated. So, we accumulate karma. From those, all the sufferings in cyclic existence are produced. Therefore, all afflictions and faults arise in dependence on ignorance. Then doubt is the fifth one. It's a two-pointedness of mind with respect to the Four Noble Truths, actions and their effects, karma, and so forth. It has the function of serving as a basis for non-engagement in virtues. Doubt obstructs all virtuous activities and especially interferes with seeing the truth. So it's kind of the vacillating mind. Maybe the Four Noble Truths are true, maybe they're not. Maybe there's karma, maybe there's not. And Aryadeva, he was the main disciple of Nagarjuna. He said, those who doubt have the ability to realize the truth as long as they investigate their doubts, something like that. So doubt isn't necessarily bad, but it is if we don't investigate and resolve the yes or no issue. So that's why we do analytical meditation, to resolve our doubts, to come to a conclusion. And when we come to a conclusion, then that's when we apply our stabilizing or our single-pointed concentration. We focus without distraction on the conclusion that we've come to through analysis, and kind of, the wisdom of contemplation becomes the wisdom of meditation when we kind of burn that correct understanding into our mind and displace the ignorance that is its opposite. So that's doubt. That's the fifth root delusion. And the sixth one is afflicted views, of which there are 5. So I won't spend too much time, but they're the view of the transitory collection as a real I. So again, seeing an I somewhere where there's not. A view holding to an extreme. The conception of wrong views as the right views as supreme. Conception of bad ethics and modes of conduct as supreme. And a perverse view. So, when we talk about wrong views destroying merit, it's the perverse view. So it's holding wrong views opposite to reality. So then there are these 20 secondary, so they're the main ones, and they give rise to these secondary afflictions, which are sort of branches of those 6. They're called secondary afflictions. Usually we use the term delusion for affliction. Jeffrey Hopkins translated Nyönmong in Tibetan as affliction, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and to a certain extent Lama Yeshe calls it, translated as delusions. Same thing. They're called that because they're close to or portions of the root afflictions. So just to run through them, just to name them, and then we'll go through them: belligerence, resentment, concealment, spite, jealousy, miserliness, deceit, dissimulation, haughtiness, harmfulness, non-shame, non-embarrassment, so recognize yourself yet? Then the next ones are more to do with meditation: lethargy, excitement, non-faith, laziness, non-conscientiousness, forgetfulness, non-introspection, and distraction. It's nasty stuff. Belligerence is an intention to harm another through striking and so forth, when one is in any of the 9 situations of harmful intent, thinking this person has harmed me, this person is harming me, this person will harm me, this person has harmed my friend, this person is harming my friend, this person will harm my friend, this person has helped my enemy, this person is helping my enemy, this person will help my enemy. So that kind of sums up politics right there, Belligerence. It has the function of serving as a basis for bearing weapons, for punishing and preparing to injure others. It differs from the root affliction, anger, in that anger is an impatience and an intent to harm that arises when a harmful sentient being or one's own suffering or sources of suffering appear to the mind. Belligerence is an extremely disturbed state of mind, which upon a great increase of anger is a wish to inflict harm on others, such as by physically striking that person when he's in one's presence. Resentment is a wish to harm or answer harm involving non-release of a continuum of anger. It has the function of serving as a basis for impatience. Resentment. Concealment is a wish through the force of ignorance to hide a fault when another person, such as a spiritual guide, points out that fault. It has the function, so we want to hide our shortcomings. It has the function of increasing faults, of serving as a basis for contrition and not abiding in contact with happiness, and of impelling rebirth in bad migrations. Spite is a wish, through the force of belligerence and resentment, to speak harsh words out of ill will to another who has pointed out a fault. It has the function of causing one not to abide in happiness in this lifetime by causing engagement in many faulty actions, such as speaking harsh words and by generating many non-meritorious actions. Spite also generates unpleasant fruitions in future lives. Jealousy is a disturbance of the mind from the depths that involves an inability to bear another's fortune due to being attached to goods and services. It involves hatred and has the function of causing discomfort of mind and not abiding in contact with happiness. Miserliness is a tight holding onto articles without letting them go through the power of attachment to goods and services. It has the function of serving as a basis for the non-diminishment of possessions and generates the unwanted in this and future and later lives. So miserliness is one of the chief causes of being born as a hungry ghost. Deceit is a pretension of having good qualities, whereas one does not, through the force of strong attachment to goods and services. As in the case of the hypocrisy of pretending to have a disciplined mind in order to deceive others, deceit can involve ignorance and desire and has the function of serving as a basis for wrong livelihood. Wrong livelihood refers to deceitfully gaining goods through hypocrisy, through speaking soft words in accordance with another's thoughts, through praising others' possessions, through speaking on the faults of miserliness and so forth, and through praising another's act of giving and so forth. Dissimulation is a wish to hide one's faults from others through a force of desire for goods and services. I just go through these others a little more quickly. Haughtiness is a puffing up of the mind through taking joy and comfort in observing one's own good health, youth, beauty, power, signs of long life, prosperity, and so forth. Harmfulness is an unmerciful wish to harm other sentient beings. Involving anger, it is a lack of compassion, as in wanting to harm or cause others harm, or in taking delight when seeing or hearing of harm to sentient beings. It has the function of injuring others. Non-shame is a non-avoidance of faults from the viewpoint of one's own disapproval or religious prohibition. Non-embarrassment is a non-avoidance of faults from the viewpoint of another's disapproval. So the Buddha is said to have said that there are two things that keep the world on an even keel. That's shame and embarrassment. So shame is when you think to yourself, I can't do that. I've taken a vow against doing that, or this is not the right thing to do. I'd be very disappointed in myself if I did that. So it's kind of self-control, and not giving in to one's worst impulses. Embarrassment, or the way I've heard it translated is these two, shame and fear of blame. Fear of blame or non-embarrassment is not doing something out of concern that others will, think you're a bad person. So that can, of course, that can be kind of coming from an eight-worldly dharma of wanting to preserve some kind of reputation that you might have amongst others. But it does have, and so that's kind of negative motivation actually. But it still can have the function of preventing you from doing something stupid or something harmful. And especially if you're a monk or a nun and you're wearing robes and you're kind of representing the Sangha, then that can also stop you from, following desire, following attachment, wanting to do some non-virtuous activity because it will reflect badly on the others. So, or if you're, if people see you, even if you're not a monk or nun, if you're some, Buddhist leader or something like that, you representing, some people see you as representing Buddhism, then you have to kind of control yourself lest you bring Buddhism into disrepute. So it's that kind of consideration. So this Buddha said, shame and fear of blame stop people from doing bad things. So non-shame and non-embarrassment are their opposites. So they're two of the 20 secondary delusions. Lethargy is a heaviness and unserviceability of body and mind. It involves ignorance and has the function of assisting all root and secondary afflictions. For in dependence on lethargy, these increase. Excitement is a scattering of the mind to the attributes of the desire realm experienced previously and an engagement in them with attachment. So that's, what I said at the beginning when we try to meditate on the breath. The worst distraction is, this discursive, chattering mind that's always thinking stuff, it's never quiet. So as long as we don't control excitement, we'll never develop single-pointed concentration. And what stimulates excitement is non-virtuous actions, engaging in non-virtuous actions. So that's why the basis of mental stabilization is proper ethical conduct. And to help us achieve that, we take vows. So, the essence of morality is taking precepts. Non-faith is a non-conviction, non-delight, and non-wishing with respect to virtuous phenomena. It involves ignorance and has the function of serving as a basis for laziness. So non-faith is the opposite of the three types of faith. It is non-conviction in actions and non-conviction in karma. So we don't believe in karma. So we have non-delight and dislike of the possessors of auspicious qualities, such as the three jewels. So we don't see the qualities of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha as worthy of emulation. And then non-wishing or non-seeking of liberation. So we don't really believe that there's freedom from suffering. We don't believe there's enlightenment, so we don't strive for those goals. So laziness is a non-delight in virtue due to attachment to lying down and so forth. There's a short text that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has taught from time to time, and there's a phrase in it, give up stretching legs. As Rinpoche translates it. So give up stretching legs. So when we lie down and relax, we always stretch out our legs. When we're sitting in meditation, and, our legs aren't stretched out. So I think kind of referring to that. There are three kinds of laziness. There's the laziness of procrastination, mañana, I'll do it tomorrow. So it's like a Buddhist vehicle. We've got the Hinayana and the Mahayana, we have the mañana. I'll do it tomorrow. It's putting off our practice. Laziness of procrastination, the laziness of attachment to worldly work. So it's like we look busy, we're doing stuff, but actually it's a laziness from a Dharma point of view, because we get involved in all these external activities, and which are more interesting, more exciting than sitting down and meditating or studying text and stuff like that. So a little paradoxical, very busy. We're really busy, but actually we're being lazy. And then there's the laziness of delusions of incapability. What's the use of practicing meditation? I've been trying for years and still I can't focus on my breath for more than 5 seconds, I'll never be able to do this. I'll never be able to understand the emptiness. I'll never memorize these texts. It's beyond me. So, you have to remember the Buddha was once worse than we are. So, the Buddha became enlightened through overcoming laziness. So, we have the potential to become enlightened. We just have to apply ourselves. Non-conscientiousness, it causes a looseness of mind, not keeping it from afflictions and faults. I think Bagmepa. So non-conscientiousness causes a looseness of mind, not keeping it from afflictions and faults, and resulting in the non-cultivation of virtuous phenomena. Forgetfulness is an unclarity of mind and a forgetting of virtuous objects through mindfulness of objects of the afflictions. So, when we're trying to focus on the breath, we do it for a few moments and we forget. That's where our mind is. Our mind goes somewhere else. So then eventually, so when we're trying to focus on the breath or some other object, the main part of our mind, 95% of our mind has to be the mind of mindfulness, or remembering what it is that we're supposed to be focused on. And then, 5%, a little corner of the mind, is acting as a sentry or as a sort of vigilant, watching for distractions, you know. So we're meditating and here comes a distraction across the horizon, you know. So the vigilance will kind of deflect it before it can drag the main part of our mind away from the object. So forgetfulness is the opposite of that remembering or mindfulness. It has the function of serving as a basis for distraction. Then non-introspection. Non-introspection is an unknowing engagement in physical, verbal, and mental deeds. It has the function of serving as a basis for the infraction of codes of ethics. So it's not keeping mindful of the vows we've taken, or even if we haven't taken vows, of trying to avoid the 10 non-virtuous actions and so forth. You know, we're not watching what's going on in our mind. We're not watching our speech. We're not watching our actions. So then when we go with the flow, as we've been doing since beginningless time, we're actually following the delusions. And, you know, and we're not practicing Dharma. Distraction is a scattering of the mind from its object of observation. It can involve desire, hatred, and ignorance, and has the function of preventing separation from desire. It's a scattering of mind to pleasant objects, whereas distraction, which we just had a moment ago, excitement. So, sorry, this is distraction. See, I'm distracted. Excitement we talked about before. So that's a scattering of the mind to objects of attachment, excitement, whereas distraction is a scattering to any object. So, you know, we can be meditating on our breaths, trying to develop our concentration, and then we, you know, perhaps bodhicitta can arise. You know, I'm doing this meditation in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. That's a distraction. It's a good one, but it's still a distraction. It takes our mind away from what we're trying to do, which is develop our concentration. So excitement and distraction. So then there are 4 changeable mental, so those are the 20 secondary delusions. And finally, there are 4 changeable mental factors. So they're so-called because they can become virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral by the power of motivation and the minds that accompany them. So there's sleep, contrition, investigation, and analysis. So sleep, I think we know what that is. It's a powerless withdrawal inside of the engagement by the sense consciousness in objects. It depends on causes such as heaviness of body, weakness, fatigue, taking the figure of darkness to the mind, and so forth. Sleep involves ignorance and has the function of serving as a basis for losing virtuous activities. The proper time for sleep is the middle watch of the night, not the first or last watches, nor during the day. So I'm not quite sure how long a watch is. Maybe a couple of hours. So thus there are 2 types of sleep, virtuous and non-virtuous. The latter having the function of degenerating virtuous activities. So Lama Yeshe always used to tell us when we go to sleep, and I don't know why he used this analogy, but he said, don't sleep like a cow. You know, just fall into bed unconscious. and go to sleep. But rather, we should do, understand that in our present condition, we have to sleep. We need to sleep for a certain amount of time. And I think from the Dharma point of view, this idea of 8 hours sleep is necessary for good health is kind of a crock. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, in his previous life as the Laudo Lama, it was said that he'd passed beyond the need for sleep for the last 20 years of his life, that he lived in a cave those last 20 years of his life, meditating 24 hours a day. Either sitting in meditation or even when he was eating or doing other necessary activities, he was still, didn't leave a meditative space. And he certainly didn't sleep. And in the decades after I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche in 72, I only ever saw him lie down once. He really gave up stretching legs. That was in 1973 or 74. He was very sick. He had a very high fever for 2 or 3 days. I don't know what caused it. But he normally he sat on his bed in his room at the monastery, and for those 2 or 3 days he was actually lying down, and then he recovered, and then I never saw him lie down for decades after that, and it was only in those early years when he and Lama Yeshe used to go to Australia, 74, 5, 6, the first, I think, 4 years when they went to Melbourne, they stayed at my mother's place. And she always marveled that, the days or the weeks they stayed with her, that his bed was never disturbed. He just sat on top of it. He never got under the sheets or anything like that, So, then he had the stroke in, I think, 2011, I think it was. So after that, his body was a little more compromised. He seemed to sleep more, but he wouldn't really lie down and sleep like we do. He would slump back against the wall, or maybe he'd look like he was dozing off on a car ride or in a plane. But again, when the lamas sleep, it's not like this unconscious sleep that we have. Their minds are still in certain kind of meditation. It's not this non-virtuous sleep. This mental factor is. So when we go to sleep, we can think, in my present situation, I have to sleep. But I'm sleeping so that I will have more energy to practice and continue on the path to enlightenment tomorrow. If I don't sleep, because of my present karma, my body and mind won't be able to function properly. So there's that. But and there are different meditations we can do before we go to sleep, like you can meditate in the clear light. If you know how to do that, try to go to sleep in the clear light, or visualize the Buddha sitting there at the head of your bed, and you're lying down with your head in the Buddha's lap, and the Buddha is protecting you during the sleep. Or and then when we sleep, we're taught to lie down on our right side with our legs stretched out and with our left arm along the line of our body, like the position the Buddha adopted when he passed away. It's called the lion position, or sleeping like a lion. So when a lion sleeps, they're not fully asleep, he's alert, in case some danger happens. So it's not like a deeply unconscious sleep. And then Lama used to tell us that we can also, if we could go to sleep with our head in our hand, but with our fourth finger blocking our right nostril, that's the side that attachment functions. Attachment. Okay, this is getting slightly off, but our mind in our body, our mind doesn't sort of flop about everywhere. There are psychic channels within our body, 72,000. And there's a central psychic channel, and there are right and left channels. And then there are chakras or channel wheels at different points along the central channel. And there are psychic channels branching off those, and it's like a capillary network with branches and sub-branches and sub-sub-branches. So it's, this is very clearly described in the tantric texts. And so the right channel is the channel associated with desire, and the left channel is the one associated with anger. So when we do the inner heat meditation, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, whenever we do it, can go into those a little more. But Lama said if we go to sleep in the position of the Buddha and we block our right nostril with our fourth finger like that, then that can stop desire and attachment functioning while we're asleep. Some people can do it. I have to move around. I can never just go to sleep in that one position and stay there the whole night. So that's sleep. So sleep can be positive or negative. So if we think of it as we're on the path to enlightenment, it's like climbing a steep mountain. There are these little spots where you can stop for a moment. Stopping doesn't mean you're being lazy. Stopping means you're being sensible. You're just having a little rest so your body gains strength, so you can climb the next part more easily. If you try to climb without stopping, you probably won't make it. So we should think, we're sleeping for the benefit of all sentient beings, just taking a break so that the next stage of the path will be able to accomplish more efficiently. Contrition, so it's the second of the 4 changeable mental factors. It's remorse or regret for a deed done by oneself in accordance with one's own thought or upon pressure by someone else, which one subsequently comes to dislike. So there are 3 types. There's virtuous, which is remorse for negative activities. So, we do something negative and then we feel bad about that. That's positive. There's non-virtuous remorse, where we feel sorry that we did something virtuous. Oh, I shouldn't have given, that money to the beggar because now I don't have any money for tea. Like that. There's neutral remorse for activities that neither helped nor harmed others, such as making a mistake sewing. I guess. So anyway, regretting positive actions is negative, regretting negative actions is positive. Investigation and analysis. Investigation is an inquiry into rough entities of objects as well as their names, whereas analysis is a fine discrimination of these. In dependence on their objects, investigation analysis of three types: virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral. The virtuous analysis, such as analysing selfnesses with an intention to emerge from cyclic existence, has the function of serving as a basis for abiding in contact with happiness, in that it generates pleasant effects. Non-virtuous investigation analysis, such as inquiring into pleasant and unpleasant objects motivated by desire and hatred, has the function of serving as a basis for not abiding in happiness, in that it generates unpleasant effects. So that could be like, spending a lot of time analysing, should I buy this jacket or not? Will it make me look good or will it make me look fat? Investigating, analysing things out of attachment. So that's kind of negative. Whereas a positive investigation is, thinking about the teachings or investigating, trying to understand emptiness in order to attain liberation and enlightenment, things like that. So investigation is more of a general sort of looking at things, and the analysis is looking at things more finely. So those are the four changeable mental factors. So I don't know, I think it would be good if over the next week you can meditate on these, do analytical meditation on these, the sixth principle and the 20 secondary delusions. I can send them out, the list and a brief description out, but how would I do that to everybody, Bob?
That's a good question. We need to have people send their emails to someone. Could send them to me at bob@kurukulla.org.
Okay, so if you want to do this meditation and a little more, I'll send something to Bob tonight or tomorrow, and then if you email Bob, he can send it to you. Okay. Okay, so tonight didn't quite go as I thought it might, but here we are. I found it very helpful to meditate on these delusions, to understand where my suffering and other suffering comes from, to know the enemy, and to understand the antidotes. So so if you can practice some breathing meditation again, so do 5 or 10 minutes breathing meditation, and then do some analytical meditation on these different delusions. Do I have this or not? How does it function in my mind? And how does it cause suffering? And how do I overcome it? What's the antidote? So these are the kind of things we think about in analytical meditation. So practice a little concentrative meditation at the beginning, and always remember to generate bodhicitta at the start. Think, I'm doing this meditation in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Then you do the breathing, then you do the analysis, and at the end, do the dedication, like we're going to do now. So think, we generated bodhicitta at the beginning. We've been discussing the Buddha's teaching on the minds and mental factors. So we've created quite a bit of merit. So before it's destroyed by anger or wrong views and so forth, we should dedicate it. So think, because of this merit, may I quickly reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, guys, thank you. So, this is just a brief time, but there's the rest of the week now. So you can spend more time over the next week than we could just spend here for an hour or two. And that way you get more benefit, I think. I don't think you get much benefit from me, so the benefit has to come from yourself. Okay? So thank you for being here. Thank you, Bob. And hope to see you all next week.